Have you ever heard of the legend of the Edmund Fitzgerald? It's a story that has echoed through the Great Lakes for decades, a chilling tale of a mighty ship and the unforgiving fury of a November storm. This is the story of its final, fateful voyage. The SS Edmund Fitzgerald was no ordinary vessel. Launched in 1958, she was the largest ship on the Great Lakes, a true queen of the inland seas, a behemoth of steel over 729 feet long. For 17 years, she was a workhorse, hauling taconite iron ore from the mines of Minnesota to the steel mills near Detroit and Toledo. She set records, she was reliable, and her crew was seasoned and respected. But on November 9, 1975, the Fitzgerald embarked on a journey from which she would never return. That day, the weather forecast was grim, but nothing a ship of her size and a crew of her experience hadn't faced before. Captain Ernest McSorley, a veteran with over 40 years of sailing, was at the helm. He was a man who knew the lakes like the back of his hand. As the Fitzgerald steamed out of Superior, Wisconsin, loaded with over 26,000 tons of taconite pellets, the winds began to howl. What started as a typical November gale quickly escalated into a monstrous storm, a November witch, as the sailors call them. The National Weather Service had issued warnings, but the storm's intensity surpassed all predictions. Hurricane-force winds whipped the surface of Lake Superior into a frenzy, creating mountainous waves, some reported to be as high as 35 feet. Imagine standing on the deck of a ship, looking up at a wall of water taller than a 3-story building, crashing down with immense force. The air was thick with freezing spray and snow, reducing visibility to almost zero. It was a battle of man and machine against the raw, untamed power of nature. The Fitzgerald wasn't alone in the storm. Another freighter, the Arthur M. Anderson, was trailing her, seeking some shelter from the colossal waves in the Fitzgerald's wake. The captains of the two ships were in constant radio contact, sharing information and navigating the treacherous waters together. Through the crackle of the radio, a picture of the Fitzgerald's struggle began to emerge. Around 3:30 in the afternoon, Captain McSorley radioed the Anderson with troubling news. "Anderson, this is the Fitzgerald. I have a fence rail down, 2 vents lost or damaged, and a list." A list meant the ship was taking on water and tilting to one side. In a storm this violent, any compromise to the ship's integrity was a serious threat. A little later, he reported that both of his radars were out. He was sailing blind in a blizzard, relying on the Anderson to guide him toward the safety of Whitefish Bay. Despite the growing danger, Captain McSorley's voice remained calm and professional. He was a stoic leader, not one to show panic. The Anderson's captain, Bernie Cooper, guided him through the storm, tracking the Fitzgerald on his own radar. The Fitzgerald was fighting, holding her own against the tempest. As darkness fell, the storm reached its terrifying peak. The situation was critical, but there was still a sense of hope. They were getting closer to the shelter of the bay. But then came the final, haunting communications. One of the most chilling parts of this story, a detail that sends shivers down your spine, comes not from the captain, but from the galley. The ship's cook, a man just trying to do his job in the midst of chaos, reportedly got on the radio. His voice, heavy with a resignation that is hard to comprehend, spoke a simple, heartbreaking farewell to the crew of his ship. He said, "Fellas, it's too rough to feed you. It's been good to sail with you." It was a goodbye, a final acknowledgement of their shared fate, a moment of profound humanity in the face of overwhelming odds. Can you imagine the weight of those words? The understanding that this was the end. Shortly after 7:10 p.m., the Anderson radioed the Fitzgerald one last time to ask how they were doing. Captain McSorley's reply became the last words ever heard from the ship. "We are holding our own." Minutes later, the Edmund Fitzgerald vanished from the Anderson's radar. Just gone. There was no distress call, no final, desperate plea for help. One moment, the ship was a blip on a screen, fighting its way to safety. The next, there was only the raging storm and an empty, dark lake. All 29 men on board, including the captain and the cook, were lost to the icy depths of Lake Superior. What happened in those final moments? How could a 729-foot freighter disappear so suddenly without a single Mayday call? The mystery has haunted maritime historians, investigators, and the families of the lost crew for nearly 50 years. This is where our story pauses, on the edge of that great, unanswered question. The disappearance of the Edmund Fitzgerald is a puzzle with many pieces. Was it the waves? Did the ship break in two? Was there a structural failure? We will dive into the theories, the investigation, and the discovery of the wreck in the next part of our series. Thank you so much for joining us for part 1 of the tragic tale of the Edmund Fitzgerald. If you found this story as compelling as I do, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out. Be sure to tune in this Saturday for part 2, where we explore the frantic search, the discovery of the wreck, and the theories that attempt to explain what really happened on that terrible night. We'll see you then.